me welcome Patricia Summersett. Hello, welcome. I like the bag.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. My mom painted that.
What?
Yeah, she painted the owl on that, and then it was printed into a bag. She has a few of them. I just carry them around because.
Does your mom have an Etsy page?
I love my mom. No, she's way too old school for that. But yeah, it's a good looking owl. Yeah. My wisdom right here.
So welcome. This isn't your first time here in Columbus, is it?
No, I was here in December for the first time, actually, for GalaxyCon.
Quite a different change of temperature.
Yes.
It was
this is far more pleasant.
Freezing here. By the way, so anybody here been to a previous Animate or GalaxyCon? A lot of you out there.
I love
Any
that.
first-time convention goers?
Oh my gosh, amazing.
I love that. Do you remember?
Welcome.
Do you remember your first convention and what that experience was like?
I did go to one. I went to LA Comic-Con, and I was sort of scoping it out, knowing that I would do conventions, because I was sort of recording the first game. And I remember being so completely overwhelmed, and then I went home and I stayed in bed in the fetal position for a little while, because I was like, I found the crowds really intense. It's different being on the other side of the table, though. Like,
you have that barrier.
Yeah.
Right.
And strangely enough, my first convention that I went to, weird story, it was in Kuwait. And it was completely out of line. We're like, is this real? But it was. It was like their first convention over there. So they invited, and yeah, went over there with a friend. It was it sort of set the bar in some place. And I was like, I don't think it's going to be like this for every other convention. But it was super cool. And of course, the people that you meet there are all the ones that are really, like, they really want to sort of be engaged in world culture and stuff like that. So it was great, actually.
Do you, when going to these conventions, do you get starstruck by any of the celebrity guests that we have?
Sometimes, yes. Yes, absolutely. There's going to be a convention coming up, one of the GalaxyCons, actually, and I'm really looking forward to meeting Susan Sarandon for a variety of reasons, but also there's a group of my friends they run a Rocky Horror Picture Show in Montreal. And I've so far gotten a lot of the signatures for their poster and sort of donated it to the theater and said, here, because you guys are such amazing performers. And it's like a big cult following of this wonderful performance. And one of the signatures I don't have is Susan Sarandon. So I'm like, I got one opportunity probably. I'm going to,
That is awesome.
Yeah, it's fun.
And speaking of theater, that's where you kind of got your start, right?
Yeah, theater was very much where I got my start. Previous to that, it was like competitive ice dancing.
Right.
And then I switched over to theater when I was in university. And I was like, I'm looking for something more sustainable and that has a creative process that you can train for. And that made a lot of sense. It was either going to be like figure skating or theater right out of high school. And I did the figure skating first because it has a very short shelf life.
Right.
And you kind of like, you do it or you just don't even try. So I tried that and it went so far. And then eventually it was theater, but yeah.
Do you prefer a traditional play style, or you like musicals? Like, do you have a preference?
Interesting question. Traditional play style, all the way for me.
Shakespeare.
Yeah, I mean I would say traditional, modern, like contemporary, classic. I did study. I have my master's of classical acting. That's what I did do that. But it was more about the technique and the history of theater in general, and about understanding form and how to fill out a text, which I very much use in my work in video games now. Classic storytelling. Right. Yeah, classic storytelling's in everything. So I do like that. I do love a good musical, but even though I sing, I cannot sing musical theater, like, to save my life. It's a totally different technique.
I've heard a lot of folks who eventually end up into, not just acting, but voice acting, have said that their experience in theater was very instrumental into like voice acting.
Yeah, totally. I mean, because it is a full body experience for sure. The other thing I think, I guess the big sort of fallacy about voice acting, I mean, you probably hear this if you go to conventions a lot now too, but voice acting is acting, first and foremost, especially this kind of voice acting. I would say for radio and stuff like that, you might be able to get into it from something different, but in terms of creating character and then also maybe transferring things to like performance capture. There's a lot of hybrid forms now where you're expected to maybe be in front of a camera too. That all is like acting training is really the best thing for that. Different ways in, but a lot of people with you have a lot more to offer in a room if you've researched, I guess, the backstories and the kind of like general ideas of classic storytelling in some way or another, and you've researched it in your body. You have a lot more to offer in the room as an actor to be able to take direction.
Now, you mentioned both ice skating and going into theater and acting, and those are two industries that it seems like you have to have a strong support system at home, knowing that, like there may not be, success there. There may not be money there. So I'm assuming that you did have a strong support system at home for that?
I did. Well, as you can see, my mom is an artist. Yeah. I'm one of those lucky ones who didn't do it out of maybe rebellion or because they didn't have a place to go. I felt arts really had to happen for me. Right. I had a fairly tumultuous high school experience, regardless of how awesome my parents were trying to support. But I also felt like arts was a safe haven, and it was a place to discover how to be less cynical about so many crazy things coming at you in the world. So I love to tell stories and examine human behavior, but from that place, not sort of putting a label on it per se, but maybe putting it in a character. It's a different thing.
And with that, you've done several different mediums in the entertainment industry, whether it is theater, live action, television, movies, voice acting, in a band. Do you have a preference for a storytelling medium?
I really don't. It's hard for me to decide that I would do just one. I've always felt like I'm never just an actor. I'm like, I'll probably do more writing as I'm getting older, and I feel like I have a voice that I can structure around a story now that I've spent a lot of time with scripts. And I started in dancing, and I grew up singing with my sisters. I have 3 sisters, and all 3 of them sing. So we sometimes collaborate together, kind of just like pour the creativity out wherever you can, like that, and hope. And whether or not it's an original story or something that you're glomming on or collaborating into, they both have such useful whatever purposes in your life in terms of how they all kind of help your career come to fruition.
And then, along those same lines, again, you ice skating, band, acting. You almost have like a Forrest Gump type of life where you're like, oh yeah, I did that. Of course I did. Yeah, of course, yeah, I did that. Is there something else out there? Like what is there something a bucket list item that you would like to also knock off? Relatively.
I can't believe you just called me Forrest Gump. Just kidding. No, but actually I was thinking, yes, I suppose the point of that kind of diversification of art is that the attempt is always to try to find new eyes at things and come to all these different mediums with child's eyes, So yeah, in that sense, Forrest Gumpy, but I just think of the movie, Forrest Gump reminds me of the Peter Sellers movie, what is it, Being There. I feel like Forrest Gump is sort of a ripoff of that movie. I don't know if it actually is, but anyway, I think of that movie when I think of Forrest Gump. But
yeah, I mean, now that you mention it, I'd never put the two together, but yeah, that does make a lot of sense.
They have strong similarities. I'm like, did they just rip that off and put it into Forrest Gump? But anyway, yeah.
And then you've dipped your foot into a lot of different worlds, both Star Trek.
That's true. I made it onto the final season of Star Trek Discovery. Yeah, that's cool.
Did you grow up either a Star Wars or Star Trek? I mean, first off, you've done both, but
a little bit of both. Yeah, a little bit of both. So it is nice to have like a little tiny foot in both franchises now. Actually, I've done 2 Star Wars games. The last one was Outlaws. I did like a few different characters on that. Sisik, the farthier racer announcer in Huttese. Love the fictitious language thing that can happen where you are just expected to learn a fictitious language and go to. It's the best. Yeah, I grew up with a little bit of a background in both of those. Our household was very, we had a kind of, I would say it was like more Disney because there were 4 girls and we came from a small town in rural Michigan. So yeah, I actually wish I had been more exposed to like Miyazaki films and things like that when I was younger, but my parents just didn't know. But I got to them as an adult and I was like, oh my gosh, like how did this not come my way when I was younger? Who knows, might have changed my life, who knows, but not for, for better or worse.
So with being involved in, first off, of course, the Legend of Zelda, franchise, Star Trek, Star Wars. Is there another fandom out there that has been a lifelong dream that you're like, man, now I need to touch that?
I audition for things often, and I'm always seeing there are new IPs coming up that are really exciting. There are a couple of games coming out this year that I'm really excited about being part of. One of them is an independent game and completely not in the genre of stuff that I'm sort of known for, but was inspired by the original Zelda games. You wouldn't see it in the game, but you hear this and you just go, oh my gosh, like. I don't know. I just kind of go, like, it's so much about who you're working with now, too, versus just, like, putting your stamp on a character. At this point in my career, I'm, like, happy to be in any room, happy to be collaborating, honestly, and just working at all with all the things that have come up in the industry. To be doing any sort of work solidly and regularly is a really big feat. I'm extremely lucky to be here. You know, like, I'm one of those people that got lucky and landed on a thing that's brought me traveling. You know, that was a dream, to be able to meet people around the world and travel for work. It didn't happen with TV film, but it did, strangely, with conventions and video games. So I was like, I don't know. I mean, but there are several things. Like, I would love to be, like, in a DC universe, of course. But, like, who wouldn't? They're all, like, the big things. Yeah. Right. But, like, complex, strong female characters tends to be, in whatever they are, if they're surprising and they have a newness to them that I haven't tried, I'm like, bring it on. You know. Yeah.
You mentioned Outlaws. You also did some work on the soundtrack of that. Correct?
Did I? I don't think so. Wait.
You did some music revolving around Outlaws?
About Outlaws? Not that one. I wonder what you're thinking of, because you clearly researched something
maybe,
like.
Was it Squadrons? Maybe.
Did I? I wasn't on any soundtracks for that. No, it wasn't. No.
So how does the word?
No, I did do a feature. Like, there was a French feature film that we did. We got placed. Our songs from our band got placed. Several songs got placed in that recently. Maybe that's what you saw.
I think that maybe that's why I saw the soundtrack. It was on IMDb. You know,
oh, cool. Yeah. Oh, just right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Which IMDb is the greatest thing ever. Remember when you used to watch TV and you were like, oh, I wonder what else that person was in.
Yes.
Now you just get to be like, oh, hold on, let me just pull out my phone and check it.
It's still relatively reliable. It's like one of the places on the internet that you can go and you can say, like, this is mostly official. Right. What's here? You know, within reason. Most of it's vetted. So yeah.
I want to talk about your work in mocap.
Oh yeah, I love that. Yes.
When obviously
hopefully you find this interesting. Do you guys have questions?
When you sign up to do a voice in a game, you just think, oh, okay, well, I'm gonna sign up to do a voice in a game and be a character. What is it like being that character and bringing them to life with that mocap?
A lot more like theater or TV film.
Right. Okay.
And actually, it's interesting because some of the characters that I've done started as VO, and then I had to even re-audition for them to be part of the performance capture portion, like Ash, for example. She started out in 2015 as just a voice over for the first year, and then I had to re-audition the second year 3 times. It was super intense to then do the performance capture, because I think they were considering going different ways with it. And ultimately, it was the voice that won me the job, not just like the well-rounded sort of like, I am an actor and I do this kind of work already, and I have done Assassin's Creed characters. You know, that was it was factored in, but that wasn't the reason. It was like they wanted to stick with the vocal print, thankfully, right. Which has been like an awesome thing over 10 years now. But I almost lost it, so I was like,
what's a traditional day in mocap? Like, how long are those days? Are they relatively?
They're pretty reasonable compared to like a TV and film day, I'd say. You get there in the morning, maybe around like 7:45, 7:30. You throw on a suit. You wait as long as possible before going to the bathroom, because you don't want to have to hold it for hours after you're like sealed into the suit. You get all your stuff. You have several people like putting things on you, and then you do a ROM in where they scan all of the computer parts of you to get your system working and all the joints working in the computer. And then you sometimes get rehearsal before, sometimes it's on the day, you reblock what you're gonna do, then you do the scenes. But it's a pretty like methodical day because so much of it has to be supported by the technical element of that kind of work. So it's not like you can, and you often do a lot of repetition in that. So you'll do the scene multiple times. You often have reference cameras that are filming you at the same time, so they're filming your face and your body and what's happening in the space of the room, so it can help the animators sort of paint in around what they're giving you. And every once in a while, you stand in for other people if they need just a body. And so now they're separating sometimes body and face. You see every variation of it, like a body of a character might be done in Serbia, and your face might be performed in Montreal or LA. From different capture. So it's a really fascinating form in all the ways it's coming together now.
There's so much into it as opposed to, like what games used to be. Now, do you play the games that you
I do play a bit.
Okay,
I don't sort of excessively try to beat games and stuff like that, but I'll dabble. Yeah. That's, indie games is what I tend to sort of like fall to if I'm going to just like open up a game and kind of fool around a little bit on the game, but
do you have a favorite game growing up?
Oh, well, just basic Super Mario Brothers. Yeah, it was NES. And then, like, Duck Hunt and the originals. Yeah, track and field.
All right, Super Mario Brothers 1, 2, or 3? Do you have a
1 and 3.
1 and 3?
1 and 3.
Yeah. 2 doesn't get the...
Doesn't get the hype, yeah. I don't know why. Like, they were trying something, and then they really landed in 3. They really...
Yeah, 3 was amazing. And then, of course, 3 was compatible with the Game Genie, which I am not proud to admit that I have beaten mini games using the Game Genie. But,
you've beat mini games using the Game Genie.
But only using the Game Genie.
I love that this is your confession.
Yes.
It's like...
Welcome.
Welcome to Milo's confession period. In Columbus.
We do have a microphone right there. If you guys have questions as well about Zelda, about anything here, please feel free to line up. If you have a confession to make, please. One thing that I love about, with your career, you kind of seem like you go into, I don't want to say typecast of games, but it kind of seems like, Assassin's Creed, Ghost Recon kind of like falls into that. Do you feel that sometimes you fall into that, or is it because those characters are strong female leads, like you were saying, that you kind of...
I fall into it. Like, you sort of have to go with the way that people will cast you, because you are casting your own net all the time, and you are lucky to get any sort of character that's a recognizable character that gives you those opportunities that you can train. But I have a low voice, I have an athletic background, I have a penchant for like at least being able to try different accents and dialects. It kind of lended to female warrior characters. Right. And I also have always read older on stage. Like when I was 20 or 22, I was playing 30, never the opposite. So I've always been playing older than myself. It's kind of there was nothing I could do about that. People just be like, this is how you'll get cast. And I was like,
But there's longevity in that. If you're playing older, eventually you're going to catch up to where you were at, and you're just going to keep playing that role.
Yeah, I mean, so far it's worked out all right, but you have to be patient sometimes, because it takes you a while to like work into the age range that your essence reads best at. Right. And then hopefully you'll stay there for a while, but then it may change right away. You don't know, depending on like what happens. So it's just a funny thing.
Looks like we have a question. Hello. What's your name?
My name's Josh.
Hi, Josh.
Hi, Josh. Love the hat, by the way.
Thank you. Big fan of your series. I had a question. What is your favorite underrated role that you've done? And like a role that just sticks out to you particularly, that it might not be the most well-known?
Ooh, that's I mean, I've had so many roles that people will never see. Some of that is theater, like some of my favorite roles in theater people will never see or care about. Certain TV roles. But for video games, I think of the most fun I've had and the most I've had a chance to like really sort of explore. There's a game coming out that I'm really proud of that's coming out in September. I won't say what it is yet, but anyway, it's when I have an opportunity to transform a lot and do like 5 different voices in a game, that's really exciting. I think of things like Omen Sight, which is a Spearhead Games Steam. It did nicely. It was like a pretty chill game, but had 3 different characters in that, and I got to play sort of an older witch, like an older character, and then a voice that was a little bit more in the Zelda realm. and then just a warrior, like a cat warrior, and each of them got a lot of time, and I'd spent time like doing the trailers in the older voice. I love doing sort of older women voices as well. So I got that to do that in Omen Sight. So that's the game that I think of right now. But,
I also had another question. What was it like getting casted as Zelda? Because I imagine you probably grew up with the games and stuff, and just having to voice somebody who doesn't previously have much of a voice.
yeah, it's a fascinating thing because it does have a different set of, I guess, like expectations to it than a new character. I will say that when I found out what it was, because I auditioned for it not knowing what it was, because it was secret. Not that I didn't know what Zelda was, I very well knew what that was, and had grown up with the original game and Ocarina of Time, and I remembered those games. But they told me what it was after I'd gone in, I'd gotten the role. I was like, I feel like this is a big game, but I don't know what it is. And it's interesting, they've put me in this like princessy role, and usually I'm like a female warrior character, kind of like an Urbosa or something like that. And then I signed the NDAs and they're like, by the way, this is Zelda. And it was like, like this whole like, suddenly you're like the adrenaline rush is crazy. And then it became like, oh, just do a great job, don't lose it. And then it was like, no, research, focus on the work, look at the script at hand. You have several people who are going to be helping you with this. And then I'd be like, do you want me to do it? Do you want me to learn Hylian? Do you want me to, like all these things? And they're like, we have what we're looking for. You gave us what you, before you knew what it was. Like that was your choice, and these choices and this vocal range and whatever you have is like what we think we like. So trust that, So it was like a combination of things. But yeah, the first year was a very big shift for me in terms of like, ooh, this is going to be a little life-changing when this comes out, and it has been. So you're sort of seen differently, and it brings you different places. So your landscape changes in this interesting way. I love it. It's great. It's really cool. It's been really interesting.
I appreciate the work you've done for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
When somebody tells you to trust yourself and what you've done, how difficult is that for you to do?
Super difficult,
right?
Because what does that even mean?
Right? Do you go into your mind and be like, no, like I really need to do something else, or like when somebody says trust yourself, you find that difficult to do. So.
I find it hard when people say in a room, "Be yourself," because you're like, which part? Like, I'm here because I transform and I channel, and it all comes from me. So it kind of, you're like, then it sort of becomes like, do you want this delivery a little faster or slower? Because I'll channel it differently and I'll have a psychology behind it, but like, you need to fill the form. Like, you have to do that. So you can't just go completely into your own self all the time. It's always a combo of you and outside forces. I don't know. I'm like, be yourself. What does that even mean?
Hi, what's your name?
Hi, I'm Lux, and I was just wondering what it was like voicing Breath of the Wild Zelda and then shifting over to the Hyrule Warriors series.
Oh, that was a fun shift. Obviously, they created a more sort of warrior-like. They let her like lean. It felt like Zelda 2.0. I think we talked about that in the room as well. It was super fun, and it was also like something that sort of was released and everything during the pandemic, which is with this big breath of fresh air in real life to just have something else to focus on other than all that craziness. But yeah, the transition of the characters, the fact that she can sort of jump around and be these different iterations of the same spirit is really so nice. It's the essence of acting, and I loved that progression for sure. And then obviously where it went for Tears 2 in this different way, like you get to play with different nuances, and then the style of the game also informs that as well. So yeah, it's always a fascinating journey. That.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Hello.
Hi. I was wondering, what's your process for deciding what a character should sound like?
I just lay in bed for a week and drink tea and talk about it with my friend. I start with a script. Usually I will play around with a voice for a while. Are you an actor, by the way? Is that why you're asking that? Or
I'm not. I'm just curious of the process.
It's kind of different every time. But I usually, you kind of have to start with the script and the specs on the page and what the character is voicing. And if it's a well-written script, because they aren't all well-written, but if it is a well-written script, it'll have so many clues in the script about what they're trying to frame and how big of a transition they want from you, and sort of what the stakes are in the scene. And if it's not there, then you have to make it up. But it's always a combo of like what's there and then like how you're kind of feeling in the moment. And maybe even like what auditions you've just done, and you're sort of, it's lending to, you're sort of drawing from what's immediately around you. And then this weird conglomeration of the things that have made you who you are. But yeah, in a technical sense, and I'll do it differently if I already have a role and I'm like expanding on that, or if you're just doing an audition and you don't know a lot about the project, but you might know who the director is, or the video game company, or the film company, or the casting director that's gonna see. You have to think about those things too a lot now. Genre, like what kind of, like, is it a sort of horror? Is it really cinematic? Sometimes they'll have those things in the description, and sometimes they won't, and it's just completely vague, and you just have to like throw it out there. I'd say part of the important part, if you are an actor, one of the parts of the process that becomes very important in the end is letting it go at the end of an audition. That's something that takes a lot of work. So you can spend hours on something and then learn the next day that you really didn't, you weren't even up for the role, or it was like a misleading thing. And it's like, it can be really devastating because it feels like a big waste of time. Or you can be like, that's just part of my job. And you go, floop, and you're like, I did some training, I did some acting, and moving on. It's gonna be channeled somewhere else. So, but yeah, starts with a script. That's the basics of it. And then I kind of work. Yeah.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Hello.
Hi.
Hello, Ash.
Hello. What was it kind of like working on a tactical-based shooter? And then do you have like a favorite line from the game?
Oh, like breaching charge, or just simple, yeah, watch for the blast. So for Rainbow Six, that was a fascinating process. When I auditioned for that back in like whatever it was, 2015, no idea again what the game was, because it was just an MP3 audition that I sent in through an agent. And you know what I did for that audition, which was sort of fascinating? It had a lot of like military lingo, and I was like, it's a female, it's military. I'm like, I'm just gonna have like a lot of fun with this and throw in a lot of really crass jokes. And I did that, and for some reason, I think it caught their like wry jokes, and somehow that's not really where Ash landed. But it showed range, and then like the quality of my voice. And so that got me that role. And then when I got in, I learned, I was like, Tom Clancy, oh my gosh, like this is a really cool game, it's gonna be big. And then from there, it turned into performance capture. And once that started to happen, we did like military training on set. We would do like infiltration exercises, and we would learn like snippets about what we needed for those scenes that day, and just the stakes of what it is for, you know, real operators to be sort of going through this landscape. But previous to that, I think I got that role because I actually studied military stuff for theater too. So I think I had a penchant for it already, which you're talking. And I was like, I'm Glock certified and stuff like that, like previous to getting that role. So it kind of, you know, those things sort of, they find you in that way. The interesting thing about tactical shooters, like, I feel like I'm so long-winded, but it is just me on stage. So like, what am I doing? The interesting thing about that format of recording those things for video games is that because you have a ton of lines, it's different from other styles of video games in that you have to say lines several different ways. A lot of them are shouted, a lot of them are sort of like middle range, and a lot of them are quiet. And they all have different intensity levels as well. So much like a score of music, you end up, we developed a system for that particular game. Actually, Thermite ended up being one of the, Carlos ended up being one of the directors on that as well, and he was also one of the lead characters, and then they started drawing him into the room for guidance because he was in so many sessions. And I remember doing this sort of like, we'd had like a 1 through 3 and 1 through 3, so it would be like 3 intensity, 1 volume, 2 intensity, 2 volume. So we would sort of, so then you could be like, breaching charge, breaching charge, breaching charge. And those are all like intensity 1, and it's like, breaching charge, you know, that's intensity 3, and then, you know, like that. So you could get everything you needed as quickly as possible, and it had to be this technical exercise for those portions of the recording. And then the rest is more like, what is my emotion? Like, what is my motivation? Like, so you'd have to do both for that kind of style of game, which is fascinating, really. and kind of where video games is fascinating. Pleasure to meet you as well. I hope you come back by with, I think you said Dokkaebi? No, yeah.
When you're doing some of those high intensity and, of course, in yelling and screaming, do you have anything that you do particularly to save your voice, save your throat?
I do. Sometimes you just need to take like a big old rest afterwards, but you also learn a lot. I'm doing Estel training right now, which has been extremely helpful to go back and refurbish some technique that I've been using over the years. And as I get older, it's like you get more fatigue, you just do. And you have to be more and more careful with your vocal cords, where I would just like let it rip when I was younger. And now I'm like, you might lose your instrument. You gotta be really careful. But the Estel training shows you what part of like your larynx and your throat and your cords and your cartilage, like the different parts of your cartilage that you're using. And then you can isolate them. And a lot of it's about breath support, but a lot of it I'm learning is about not giving it too much breath. It needs to be muscular, but not throwing your breath into it because that fatigues it faster. So it's kind of the opposite of what I learned when I was younger. And I'm sort of reconfiguring that now for the purpose of saving my voice. So that's kind of an interesting thing. Estel training is one very well-known thing that a lot of musical theater people do. And it's a really great technique. It's one of the many, but yeah.
I'll have to look into that.
Yeah, that's it.
Hello, what's your name?
Will?
Hi, Will.
Hi, Will.
So, for a character like Zelda, how do you come up with an accent when there is no such thing as Hyrulean in the real world to copy the accent from?
Great question.
Well, as you'll notice in the game, the accents are all over the map. They're all like English language for the English dub, but they're sort of fantasy-based from like kind of standard English to mid-Atlantic to something that sounds more like RP of what I was doing. But it's not pure RP either. Like, and we move back and forth on it from like each game. It's sort of, it is Hylian. It's just like part of it is going to be based in like what I went in with before knowing what it was, and then part of it is just like, yeah, well, we adjust these certain words because it lives in a fantasy world. So it's a combination of both of those things. I went in with that because I had studied in London, and I was like, oh, this is a character who's she's a royal, figure, and the ones that I know of that feel most true to that time are in England. That would be expressed this way with these castles and these sorts of things. So I was sort of inspired by that. And I just kind of, I started there. That's where I went with RP. But you can kind of do what you want. There's a lot of talk around, mid-Atlantic accents in video games. So if you take courses, a lot of people are sort of talking about what you do, where you don't want it to sound too specific to a period of time, per se. So there's a lot of playing around with that kind of thing. But that was my version. I don't know how I had learned an RP dialect, and I also do Mid-Atlantic, and I do sort of neutral English, but for me, I felt like that's just what felt good, honestly, for my audition. I was like, I like this.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Oh. Hello, what's your name?
Brandon.
Hi.
Brandon.
I just wanted to ask, how long is your average recording session? And then what is your longest recording session that you remember?
Ooh, depends on the genre or what you're working on, but I would say, so for video games, the average recording session for a full recording session is about 4 hours. And sometimes if it contains a lot of vocally stressful things, it'll be about 2 hours. But from there, it can vary. You can do overtime and maybe do 5. If you're in a performance capture studio where you're gonna be taking more breaks, or you're gonna be doing something that's a recorded medium with your whole body, you're gonna do an 8 to 10 hour day. And if you're on a film set, you could do a 20-hour day before it really depends on what you're working in the medium. But for video games, yeah, there is a kind of standard sort of 4-hour session that people do, kind of like a half a day. So you might do one in the morning and one in the afternoon, roughly, yeah.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Hello, what's your name?
My name is Anna, and I was wondering, do you have a favorite line that you've said in the game, or just a favorite line that you've got to say?
I do. I don't. I'm so sorry. I don't do it in Zelda's voice on the stage, and it's kind of it's just a blanket rule because I can't. for purposes, for Nintendo. But courage need not be remembered, for it is never forgotten. It's definitely one of my favorite lines, and I have different ones for each game because they're all wonderful. But if you want to hear lines, come to my table and I'll say it directly to you. We can have like a little one-on-one.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Hi, what's your name?
Hi, I'm Brennan.
Hi, Brennan.
Yeah, hi. My question is, do you find it difficult in voice acting? Because we'll take Link. He doesn't say anything. So like, in normal acting, you bounce off someone else. But like, do you find that particularly challenging, and how do you deal with that?
That's a great question. Good old Link. He doesn't offer much, does he? He has big, wide eyes, though, so you can see the empathy pouring out of them. He's basically like a mirror whom you can reflect off of. Just kidding. So voice acting has always been like that for video games specifically. Again, unless you're doing a performance capture, in which case you might be in the room with other actors and actually acting off of them and doing awkward hugging scenes where you're working around your helmet. But you sort of get used to it because there's a lot of the theater training and the acting training that you do ends up being you spending a lot of time with either inanimate objects, being inanimate objects, talking to objects and endowing them with a personality. And so by the time you get to a video game, if you can imagine what that person may have been just saying to you, and sometimes a director will do that in a room too, they'll read the line for you. Occasionally you get that opportunity where another actor has come in and done the work for you and you get to hear their line before you say yours. But it is a skill. It is an interesting, like you have to have a lot of focus in the booth. And also, regardless of how that other actor or fictitious sort of imagination is feeding you, you're still gonna have to give like 3 or 4 different takes on each line anyway of how you need to, react to that with a different level of intensity mixed with lip flaps. So it's an interesting challenge, but that's also part of the fun too, because when you nail it, you feel really good.
Awesome, thank you.
My pleasure.
You mentioned playing, some of the games, trying to play some of the games. Do you like to watch yourself on television or listen to yourself? No. I feel like that's a common thread amongst people. Is like they're like, unless I have to watch myself or listen to myself, like I don't go out of my way to do so.
I mean, I will I love certain cutscenes, for example. I'm fascinated by what they've done to my face that's not my face and my voice coming out of it. You go, whoa, that's crazy. When you can see parts of your emotion and. There's a certain degree of that's really cool, but to sit down and listen to all of your lines, it really takes you out of it's hard to be like, escapism. Right. You don't escape that.
Now, I know there's some things that are coming out that you're not allowed to talk about, obviously, but do you have any upcoming projects that you are allowed to talk about that you want to talk about?
I'm trying to think of this now. I'm like, do I actually have anything that I can... No.
All right, so maybe
not a single one.
So maybe next time we have you up here on stage, we'll be able to talk about those those projects. Any last words for our great fans here at Animate Columbus that have come out here and hung out with us this morning?
Well, I mean, first of all, thank you for making your way up to one panel in the middle of a very busy day. So it's lovely to see you. I hope it's been informative as well. Like I always try to make it, it's not all fun and games, right? And I know there's a massive parade going on and tons of celebrations. Thanks for joining. Anyway, I kind of find a Comic-Con is the most inclusive sort of space. It's all celebrating
100%.
equally differently, but all the wonderful things that we do enjoy. So I'm like, yay! It's a lot of love in Columbus today. That's
absolutely. So you're going back to your table now?
I believe
lunch
so. I have to check
then
my schedule.
Table. Lunch then table.
Might be. I might be going back for a brief bit, but I'll be at my table. All day, probably until 6:30. That's probably my day today. We'll see.
So if you didn't get up to ask a question, I know the spotlight is right there. You're on the mic. You're like, maybe I'll go by the table, swing by the table, hang out, and have a little chat.
Yeah, and I do the Zelda voice at my table when nobody's recording and stuff. So if you want to have that banter, feel free and come up and say hi. And oh my gosh, have an amazing weekend. It's such a fun con, Animate. Yay, Milo. So nice to be.
Thank you. So before we go, do you guys want to, let's have a little group selfie here. If you guys want to gather up by the stage, we're going to take a little stage selfie.
Let's do it.